All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Regional Report, a GPEC virtual series. Today's webcast will feature cybersecurity experts who will discuss current threats, rise of ransomware attacks, and innovation driving the future of the industry. Now, data tied to GPEC's new Cybersecurity Industry Insights report will also be highlighted today. My name is Eric Sperling. I am the Managing Director here at STN. If you're not familiar with the Social Television Network, we're a local media company based right here in downtown Phoenix, and I encourage all of you join the thousands of other Arizona leaders and change makers who have downloaded the STN app, as you'll find all of our shows and segments are dedicated to local leadership, community growth, and actionable solutions. In fact, if you spend some time there, you'll see some segments with GPEC CEO and President Chris Camacho. So very excited to be part of this virtual series with GPEC. Have an exciting ambassador event coming up called GPEC 101. That will be Wednesday, August 31st from noon to 1 p.m. That will be via Zoom, where the GPEC team will go behind the scenes on strategies. Event registration will be opening up soon. To learn more about how to get involved with GPEC, please reach out to Nicole. You can see her email there on your screen. All right, if this is your first time joining a regional report, we have some housekeeping items for you. The webinar will run for approximately 1 hour. Audience members are muted and without video. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the GPEC website and social media. Now, you may submit questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, but due to time constraints, we may not be able to get to all those questions. Should you experience any technical difficulties during today's webinar, please try logging out, logging back in. That usually fixes it. And then we invite you to share this information on social media. Please feel free to tag GPEC and then use the hashtag #PHX together where appropriate. All right, we have 3 experts joining us on the panel today. We'll be hearing from Max Chan, CIO at Avnet, Andrew Howard, CEO at Kudelski Security, and Chris Richardson. He is the interim CIO at the Arizona Department of Education. But first, we have Drew Callow. Drew is a research analyst for GPEC. He'll be taking us through GPEC's latest report on cybersecurity. Drew, thanks for spending some time with us this afternoon. Take it away.
Thanks, Eric. Nice to see you. And thank you, everybody else, for being here virtually. Thank you especially to Mr. Chan, Mr. Howard, and Mr. Richardson for their regional leadership and their participation today. I personally appreciate it. Cybersecurity needs were greatly accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't think any of our panelists will disagree with that statement, or that the need for data security is not a new trend, and the demand will continue to grow rapidly in the coming years. And I'm looking forward to hearing their thoughts on it. So I'm just going to jump right in. And as you can see here, cybersecurity is adapting to growing demand. There are numerous factors influencing cybersecurity's evolution. A few of the more salient influencers we identified were a widening skills gap, increasing security needs of the cloud, the use of AI to automate many security functions, and innovation around blockchain. And given these trends, we think Greater Phoenix is well positioned to capitalize on the growing cybersecurity demands of the modern digital economy and become a premier cybersecurity destination. Next slide, please. Greater Phoenix has successfully built a thriving software and IT ecosystem thanks to legacy semiconductor, aerospace, and defense technology sectors. Strategic infrastructure investments have also helped Greater Phoenix become the 5th largest data center in the country. And these assets, as well as others, have attracted no less than 70 cybersecurity service providers to the region that we were able to identify. And as you can see from the graph, this has led to a boom in cybersecurity professional employment. In 2010, Greater Phoenix's information security analyst employment was on par with the national average. Since then, it has grown by 361%, which is roughly double the national average growth. Next slide, please. And when you compare that to other markets, we hold a very strong competitive position. The security analyst growth surpasses that of most major US tech hubs, including Austin, Denver, San Jose, Seattle. And I want to point out specifically the competitive effect column, third from the right. And what that measures is the difference between expected and actual job growth over a period of time. And as you can see, we surpassed our growth expectations by about 1,600 jobs. When compare that to the expected growth of about 1,100, we more than doubled our expected growth rate in that time period. And this difference is attributable to the unique economic, natural, and cultural characteristics that make Greater Phoenix an attractive location for cybersecurity professionals. Next slide, please. And this competitiveness is critical when you consider that global cybersecurity skills gap surpassed 3 million people in 2020. And the US alone accounts for over 10% of this gap. Consequently, a majority of organizations have an understaffed cybersecurity team, and that leaves them to moderate to extreme risk of cyber attack. And closing this gap requires strategic investment and public-private collaboration among employers, educators, and government at the local and regional level. Next slide, please. And Greater Phoenix excels at this type of collaborative education and innovation. Our regional educators produce more than 6,000 degrees and certificates annually in computer science and IT related fields. And it's thanks to the local innovators that you see here on this slide. Just to name a couple of examples, ASU has invested heavily in the Fulton schools over the last 10 years to expand their engineering and computer science programs, as well as partnering with local private sector institutions. Consequently, annual graduates in these fields have grown from the Fulton schools have grown by nearly 150% in the last decade. Similarly, Maricopa Community Colleges has collaborated with Amazon Web Services and others to offer certificates in blockchain and cloud computing, Cisco CCNA and CCNP certification, CompTIA Security Plus, and others. And Arizona is also home to the unique Arizona Cyber Warfare Range, which is an innovative nonprofit institute that offers a live fire practice environment and competitive games for cybersecurity students and professionals. Next slide, please. And then just real quick, I'll touch on these, the technologies driving this evolution. I'm far from an expert on this, so I'll leave it to our panelists to discuss in more detail. But cloud IT security has exploded in demand recently. It is cloud computing is nearly ubiquitous in the modern economy, and remote work continues to fuel that demand. And that demand is high among finance and insurance sectors, which are two key base industries in Greater Phoenix. And all this local demand correlates with a rise in security services providers, or MSSPs. AI and automation are also driving efficiencies. As security professionals are understaffed, they're using AI to automate a lot of processes that allows them to focus on more pressing security matters. And this includes many local firms here and research institutes here locally that are exploring human and artificial intelligence collaboration. And blockchain, meanwhile, is being used as an extra layer of security. Blockchain makes it harder for hackers to alter data and makes it easier for security teams to detect data tampering, which is a huge value add for cybersecurity professionals. And Arizona has been a hub for blockchain innovation in recent years, thanks to multiple regulatory efforts, from the FinTech Sandbox to the 2017 legislation that recognizes blockchain-powered smart contracts, and there's other examples as well. Next slide. And we are well positioned to become a global cybersecurity leader in the coming years. We do a lot of things well. We do a lot of things. There are a lot of things that we should be investing more time and energy and resources into. Obviously, K-12 STEM education is critical. We need to continue our investment in those areas. We need to continue our investments in modern digital infrastructure, broadband access, things like that. We need to continue to promote our public and private collaboration and workforce development, get business leaders in the Valley to partner with educational institutions to identify specific certifications, skill sets, et cetera, and collaborate on curriculum. Also critically important is we need to invest in opportunities to upskill existing workers, get them into kind of the mid-level and upper level tiers of the field. And for those of you interested in more about the content of the report, as well as these recommendations, please, I urge you to check out our website where you can download the report, share it, and thank you very much for your time, and I'm going to turn it back over to Eric.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Drew. Before we go over to Max, just some quick housekeeping updates. Again, we have closed captioning available. You can see it at the bottom of your screen there. If you want, you can click that and have closed captioning. Also want to let you know, if at the beginning of the program, if you wrote down the GPEC 101 Ambassador event coming up August 31st, I said Wednesday, that's a Tuesday when I check the calendar. And then lastly, Q&A. The live audience joining us, you will have the option to add questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen there as we get into our panelists. Again, we might not be able to get to all those questions, but that feature is there. All right, Max. Max Chan, CIO of Avnet. As CIO, he's responsible for all information technology areas throughout the Avnet ecosystem, which includes the delivery of strategic business IT and digital transformation initiatives. He oversees the resources and capabilities of the global IT team and ensures the organization maintains a robust and optimized IT environment. Max, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We got to hear from Drew, and we're going to turn the floor over to you now.
Thank you very much, Eric. Really appreciate it. And thanks for the introduction. Save me a few minutes to talk about what I do. Drew, first off, great research for sure. That was very insightful and very relevant to what we're talking about today. I would bet that everyone in the Valley would know who Avnet is. We are one of the largest technology distributor globally here in Phoenix, Arizona. And if you are looking at my backdrop here, that is a background that we created to celebrate our 100-year anniversary that happens to be this year. Really a lot of great innovations throughout the organizations in advancing the supply chain and also the distribution industry for the high-tech sector, but it also means that cybersecurity is probably one of the very few things that continues to keep me awake at night today. In fact, if you look at cyber threats in the last couple of years, and especially in the last 6 to 12 months, I believe that the panelists, my fellow panelists will have some good discussions around this area. We see an interesting change in the vector of attack, right? That really gravitating a lot around ransomware as well as through phishing compromise. Many of the other things that we saw in the last few years kind of just dwindled down, and everyone is focusing on this. Why? Because it's much easier to attack individuals, the employees, and gain access to create harm to the environment. And this is being seen in many of the different news that we have read or heard about the few major ransomware attack that we are seeing. So as Avnet and our industry is no different. There are three key things that we're tracking today. Number one, phishing and ransomware, whether or not it is through a business email compromise or just a malicious site that employee happens to stumble upon because they are working remotely and do not have the necessary infrastructure to protect themselves and hence protect the environment overall. This makes being a global organization makes it a lot more challenging on that aspect that we can go into a little bit more detail during the discussion. That being said, then leading to one of the main things that we continue to see is ransomware attack, right? So whether or not you're able to drive vigilance around the organizations with your employees is very key to ensure that we are protecting ourselves from this very quick point of entry to the organization. The second item that we are tracking is really what Andrew was talking about earlier, skills shortage. 300,000+ jobs opened or labor shortage in this field across Americas. A lot of it that we see here in the greater Phoenix or Arizona area as well. And that is definitely an area that maybe as a community, we can come together and solve. Last but not the least is really around the whole supply chain. Being a distributor, we work with so many different partner, customers, vendors, etc. Every one of them could potentially be a point of entry that ended up in an attack to the organizations. And that is definitely an area that we continue to focus on and drive vigilance around. On that, I'm going to take a pause here and pass it over to my colleague who will be talking about his concerns and areas.
All right, Max, thank you so much. Yep, stick around. We have some questions coming up for you individually as well as the rest of the panel. Let's bring Andrew in now. Andrew Howard, CEO of Kudelski Security. Andrew leads the global cybersecurity business, focusing on the global expansion of the group's cybersecurity activities, as well as broadening Kudelski security solution. Andrew, welcome in. We've heard from Drew, we've heard from Max. Time to give you the floor. All yours.
Thanks, Eric. Pleasure to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak about this important topic. I'm Andrew Howard. I'm the CEO of Kudelski Security. We're a global security solution provider. Basically, what that means is that we provide cybersecurity technology and solutions to big enterprises as well as small companies that want help defending their networks. We're a part of a group that's co-headquartered in Phoenix as well as Switzerland, thus the Matterhorn behind me. And we have our U.S. headquarters right in downtown Phoenix. So we're appreciate the area and appreciate what the greater Phoenix area brings for our business. We focus on enterprise security. So our customers tend to be large enterprises, big, well-known brands. They also tend to be innovative startups who have real cybersecurity challenges. And we help them through a couple of different mechanisms. I mean, one is we provide managed services to them where a large enterprise can shift their security burden to us. So now it is our people and our experts giving them a competitive advantage, looking for threats on their networks. We pride ourselves in being one of the best threat hunters out there. Two is we provide advice. So we provide consulting services on how to secure your network or secure your data, how to meet compliance requirements, and how to build the next best product securely. And then finally, we help build technology through our research and development efforts to solve complex problems. One of our largest growth areas is in the digital asset space. We've talked a little bit about blockchain. There's a lot of work going on in the financial services community, but really in all communities around this digital asset concept, from cryptocurrencies to pure blockchain, decentralized apps, all the way to very sophisticated supply chain models that have very unique security concerns. We're right in the middle of all of that. So we pride ourselves on being an innovative cybersecurity startup, cybersecurity company that really works with all types of companies across the spectrum. We're in 65 countries across the world and really try and have local presence, but with global reach. I was asked to kind of briefly talk about the threats that we see. Again, we are the security provider for hundreds of companies out there. We see a lot of data on a daily basis. We deal with a lot of security incidents, as well as helping companies prepare for security incidents. And we really see some trends out there. I'd say at the macro level, spending by the average corporation or entity on cybersecurity is way up. I mean, the average organization we work with is aware of the problem and they're prepared to spend to solve the problem. At the same time, attacks seem like they're at a highest level than ever before. Not only our nation states, but also criminal actors now see cybersecurity attacks as a very viable mechanism to accomplish their goals. And we've talked a little bit about this ransomware topic. What ransomware has done has given the average criminal out there a real mechanism to monetize their attack. So in the past, before ransomware really came to the forefront, extracting money from a company or monetizing their attack was not always straightforward. They could come in and cause damage. They could come in and steal intellectual property, but how to actually turn it into quick cash was not easy. Ransomware really provided them a mechanism to do that. And that's why we're seeing so much of that out there. So I would say we have a little bit of an intractable problem. Defensive spending is way up, but offensive attacks are as well. And what I've found being in this ecosystem for a long time is that really corporations and organizations out there, they just really need to take this seriously. And surprisingly, we still run into a large number of companies that don't, but it's important that they take it seriously. And I don't always think that spending money is the right answer. I mean, ultimately, there's a financial requirement required to meet the specifications to secure your data, secure your network. But for most organizations out there, particularly the small ones, really these hygiene topics are of the utmost importance, more important than any technology they can buy. secure authentication, secure data storage, secure networking, configuring computers correctly, patching them properly and on time. These types of things pay huge dividends, and a lot of organizations just aren't doing the right things there, and instead spending a lot of money on kind of flashy solutions. So we view our job in the market is to help steer clients towards the right solutions that provide the right return on investment for the problems they're seeing. And I'll just close by saying, I expect this to get worse. What's happening, ransomware is taking off. Now you have a monetization scenario. And also what we see in the market is attackers are getting smarter about what they attack. Yes, they can go attack one company and extract funds from that company. They could also go attack their supply chain and attack and extract funds from everyone that supply chain serves. So we see a lot more of the kind of upstream managed service providers, supply chain providers being at risk, because it's again, if it's about return on an investment, it's a mechanism to do that. So I appreciate being here. Look forward to the Q&A. Thank you for including us, and look forward to talking about this important topic.
All right, Andrew, thank you so much. Let's turn it over to Chris now. Chris Richardson, Interim CIO at the Arizona Department of Education and Deputy CIO of Product Ownership at Arizona State University. Chris is the founder and co-host of the Urban Complex podcast, Smarter Cities for a Stronger Tomorrow, and has been leading the transformation of ASU into a smart campus. All right, Chris, you get to kind of close us out here as we move from panel to Q&A, but give you an opportunity here. The floor is yours.
Great, thanks for that introduction, Eric. I appreciate being here. I do want to thank GPEC for sponsoring the Urban Complex podcast as well. So thanks for that. Eric mentioned that I'm kind of in a unique role right now. I probably should start with that. I am still employed by Arizona State University, but I'm on loan for a unique assignment as the CIO with Arizona Department of Education. So I can bring two hats to this conversation, although it's only been week 6 at the Department of Education. So I think I'll start with just the fact in the report about the cybersecurity gap, and just remind everyone that ASU's Fulton Schools of Engineering has, I believe now, more than 29,000 students. That's larger, just the School of Engineering is larger than the entire School of MIT, larger than the entire School of Georgia Tech. So there's tons of tech talent that's coming. I saw a few questions in that area, so we can talk to those later. I think another piece for my ASU hat, for those that knew Tina Thorstensen when she left ASU, we decided to change the posture of security at ASU, and we've hired Donna Kidwell, Chief Information Security Officer, but as well, she's also our Digital Trust Officer. Trust is a really interesting way to look at what's happening, what you've heard from Max and Andrew, and it starts with the experiences of our customer and how they're navigating our world. As well as moving into blockchain. We've been exploring how to build blockchain-oriented learner credentials, blockchain-oriented transactions between our agencies like community colleges and other universities. While these things aren't baked, we are exploring how to make those a better experience, but as well as a digital trust side. Direct in my ASU portfolio, I was kind of the equivalent to the Chief Product Officer. And so ASU is actually starting to build a lot more of our solutions. Now, in a more of a traditional IT landscape, most IT waits till the end, you have a security review, and then you're subject to securities requirements. And then you, a lot of times have to start over and do things from the beginning, or do things all over again. When you're building solutions, and you can, with cloud technologies today, you can actually embed the security by design into your CI/CD pipelines. You can deploy in a standard way. And that's really exciting to us because we get a more secure product that we're building as we're using native cloud technologies, not just computing in the cloud. That's pretty exciting. And then I'm sure we've all heard the vendor landscape significantly is changing, and who you trust, then back to digital trust, and how you trust them. SolarWinds opened our eyes to what is possible in the ecosystem of who you look at in your vendor landscape. I would say from the 6 weeks in the Department of Education view, I think a really important piece, we still have some physical environments, so a lot of that server hardening, great practices. You heard Max talk about phishing. Phishing is critical. That's what leads to the ransomware side of things. And so we really are just doing a ton of education around what's possible and best practices there. One thing that I'm really excited about, the pandemic led to some interesting observations across our landscape beyond what AD directly controls. And many students did not have access to broadband at the home. And so our superintendent commissioned a tech task force to look at landscape and make recommendations. And I'm in a very fortunate position to be responding to those recommendations. They came out at the end of June. They're now public. If anyone wants to see them, superintendent distribute them. I'd be happy to forward what those are. But we're building a program by which we will be engaging with the 700 plus local education agencies and really looking to assess gaps, whether it's broadband or connectivity to the homes, as well as what's actually physically in the classroom. And so back to cybersecurity, we're going to need to secure all that as well. So we're really looking for the unique partners. We don't make those decisions for the LEAs. There's a lot of autonomy there, but we want to help create buy-in that we can pool what is going to be an amazing amount of federal funds to make these things happen. So I would say those are some high-level things that we're seeing across ASU and the Arizona Department of Education. Thanks, Eric.
All right, thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. Before we jump into some Q&A, I always just have some questions from an outsider's perspective after kind of hearing what everyone had to say. And I think, Andrew, I'll start with you because you talked about, it's going to get worse. And, we have a rise in phishing and ransomware. And where's the education gap, I guess, when you're talking to different business owners or decision makers, trying to explain some of what's going on. And then there's like, if you wanted me to explain blockchain, I would really struggle, where some of these things are just so overwhelming to a decision maker that they just pass it on and say, okay, we'll talk about this at another time because I don't have the mental energy to understand everything you're talking about. So how critical is it to educate, sort of what we're doing right now and today, but educate these decision makers on the importance of this?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. 5 years ago or 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I would have told you that the average business we walked into had no idea what was going on. In fact, there was some education required to even tell them that there was a problem, and often required some demonstration. Today, I think the average business owner has some awareness that there's a larger problem here. But I think the first step is just acknowledging the problem. And then once you acknowledge the problem, then you can decide what's the right next step. My experience is that for most small companies, they're going to have to get outside help, whether that's someone like us or their IT provider or an ISP. I mean, they're going to have to get help. They just don't have the internal expertise, nor does it make sense for them to. For the larger companies, they tend to at least have some expertise in them inside the company that can be an advocate. What we see in the market is that the director of IT security or the chief information security officer, they're moving up the org chart. They used to report way down the org chart. Now they're reporting to the CIO or general counsel or even the CEO. That's a positive and a recognition that it's getting more recognition by the average company. So overall, I would say things are improving, but certainly there are a large number of entities out there that still haven't come to grips with reality.
Yeah, and on those terms, Max, you mentioned, cybersecurity keeps you up at night. So I'm going to stay with the business leaders and decision makers who, you're asking to, drive vigilance within their organizations. And then the flip side of that might be that vigilance sometimes can turn into inconvenience for employees who are now, they're working remotely, they're on laptops, they're on different devices, and every other week they may get a call from the boss saying, hey, we've instituted some new security where you have to log in here or two-factor here. How are organizations bridging that gap between leaders being vigilant and then getting employee buy-in?
Great question, Eric. And it's picking on what Andrew was just saying earlier, right? The education piece of it is so important. If I look back 2-3 years, that has always been a big challenge. But what we are seeing in the last 12 months, the constant awareness and educations and sharing with them how this is actually not just protecting Avnet and the data and the systems within Avnet. We are helping them protecting themselves and their family, their loved ones in their own personal space, right? this is definitely hitting home for everyone when they start to understand that the little things that we are doing is helping to prevent that from happening. At the end of the day, cybersecurity and prevention, right? It's all in the defense. Defense itself is, the battle, a big chunk of the battle won. And cybersecurity span across not just the technology that we are implementing, but it's in the people, it's also in the processes that we need to make sure that is robust to be able to support that, right? So that education piece has become so ingrained in our culture that we are seeing that shift. In fact, this month we are launching a new cybersecurity campaign called I Am Cybersecurity, and we are going around the organization globally, 15,000 employees, looking at how, helping them understand how each of them play an important role to help protect Avnet and themselves.
Thanks, Max. And we have some questions coming in I'll get to in just a minute. But Chris, wanted to have you weigh in on that conversation. How do you articulate, how do you communicate, cybersecurity issues, cyber threats to those who don't have the, first clue of what you're talking about sometimes?
It depends on what the threat is. I was at Honeywell and we built our critical threat landscape and processes for handling that. And that was an interesting process. I mean, that was a good 7 years ago. And as they said, there's a lot of education in that process. Just even the change I mentioned in the beginning of moving from more of a service-oriented organization to a product organization, that requires a whole different way of working. And it was just unique in how to partner with the security teams to embed the security into the code base that we were deploying. That alone was its own education process. And it was interesting how, no offense to ASU's organization, I'm sure others have the similar posture here, but they actually liked having that checkpoint at the very end so they could say no way. And we took that and in collaboratively way, we understood exactly what we were trying to accomplish. And we showed that we built that directly into our pipelines. So it's things like that, it's just educating where the opportunity is. And then once we've done that, how do you educate leadership that it's different and it truly is more secure, those inside IT and those outside IT, because it's just such a different way. So I don't know, I think the world is evolving to more building and a product orientation. It gets you closer to your customer, gets you closer to your citizen or your constituent, whoever you serve. And I just think those are very important pieces in the evolution of IT as a function.
Thanks, Chris. And I'll keep you because this is a follow-up question. Forgive me as I read some of these cold here. We hear a lot about the skills gap and need for security professionals. How much need is there for recent college graduates versus more experienced professionals, and who may need a skills update? Chris?
A lot packed in there. I don't have the data directly from the university to speak accurately, but I can speak directionally, meaning we keep augmenting our what we're teaching our students, and we keep augmenting the numbers that are there. I mean, so the demand is there, whether they're hired here in the Valley, which has been tremendously more. We saw that in some of the data that Drew put together. So anecdotally, there is definitely demand for those students. For me, as a hiring leader, it's not that you expect many of them to come in and instantly become experts. However, pen testing, we do some amazing work in helping our students do on real research, but they don't have the historical knowledge, they don't have the long-term expertise, but they're getting way better at their ready-made skills. But for me as a hiring manager, like, it's great to bring young minds with fresh perspective and the vigor and the willingness to learn your processes and then apply security to it. It just builds your pipeline. So you get both. We're getting more and more that are tested with their experience coming out of college. But for me, like, I'd love to have that kind of junior level malleable mind that really wants to dig into how we're operating. And to me, that's invaluable to groom them up from within, and they turn into whatever you need them to be.
Great. And a question similar question here, and we'll let Andrew and Max weigh in. Are you familiar with companies that are investing in current employees by sending them to community colleges or four-year institution to upskill versus attempting to hire skilled employees away from other companies?
Yeah, I mean, the workforce development is a massive effort. I know the Maricopa Community Colleges have invested a lot of time and energy in that. I know that ASU is building what they're calling ASU for You, some free tools. We have a complete new orientation by leadership that's not the traditional academic enterprise. It's called learning enterprise, and these are these ways to kind of evolve, continue your path. I don't believe those have necessarily started directly towards cybersecurity per se, but they're definitely helping people be continual learners. I know that that's worked for me. The IT world, the security world is changing all the time. If you're not learning and paying attention to what's happening outside, it's really hard to be relevant. I know even from talking to senior leaders at AWS, they have Amazon Web Services, they have a unique challenge. They hire the perfect fit for a 2-year initiative to make some amazing new service. And they find that at the end of the 2 years, those people, their skills are already outdated. And here they are, some of the most talented people at one of the most amazingly innovative companies. So I do think workforce development, upskilling is critical. I don't know exactly which companies are doing it per se. You hear a lot of some of these code camps and whatnot. I don't know how effective they are, but I know there's a lot going on in the Valley. It's pretty interesting to help our workforce keep relevant and evolve with the changing times.
Andrew, I'll let you weigh in, or Max, go ahead.
Sorry, just want to weigh in on what Chris is saying. That talent and development is definitely one of the key area for Avnet to focus on. I mean, one of our strategic pillars is all about the people and the development and the culture, right? So we don't necessarily have a prescriptive program for a community college, a 4-year program, but we have programs that employees can actually apply to that the company would sponsor or subsidize for that continuous education. On top of that, we are investing in a lot of different content and also association organizations that we can tap into for continuous learning, whether or not it is in the technology or technical aspect, also in the management aspect as they look at progressing their career, right? So cybersecurity or other areas of IT definitely are key areas. In fact, what we are encouraged by is that seeing a lot of business employees in the non-IT areas taking on IT courses as they continue to upskill themselves, driving a more data-centric or looking at the potential career move within Avnet into a technology space.
Andrew?
So I agree with what's been said. I think my perspective on this particular question is we better find a way to do it. Just to be frank, because what I see in the market is that demand for those with cybersecurity skills is through the roof. I read a report yesterday from Gartner showing that demand for the average cybersecurity candidate is up 65% in 2021. So there are more open positions than there are available candidates. So that just puts enormous pressure on the system to find the right qualified person. It's more difficult than ever. Average search times are up. And so whether you're someone like Kudelski Security who's providing services, or you're a company trying to protect your own network, finding talent is extremely difficult right now. So you really have no choice if you want to do it at any type of scale, but to go look at apprenticeship programs and different mechanisms to find junior talent that maybe wasn't in your aperture before. And do workforce development. We've had a lot of great luck for certain types of roles, bringing in untrained non-cybersecurity people and training them very quickly. It doesn't work for every role, but it does work for the right roles. You just got to be not afraid to do it, because it takes a little bit of faith to get there. But once you see it working, we've become very pleased with the results. And then the second thing I'll say is Same thing for the workforce development. I mean, you've got to be willing to look at some non-traditional profiles in order to make it work. We've had great luck moving people out of IT and out of risk organizations into cybersecurity roles, even though they have no cybersecurity expertise. We have to make some investment in them, but it tends to pay off. And again, to my initial point, I think we as a community really have no choice, given the amount of demand there is for people and the lack of trained people that are out there.
Thanks, Andrew. We're going to remind all of our viewers that that Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen is available for those questions coming into our panelists. We have another one. And guys, forgive me if I don't deliver this in the right context. Do you see quantum being a solution for cybersecurity?
I'll go first. That's okay. I think this is a good question. So I should preface this by saying we do some work in this space, so maybe I'm biased. So I've been doing cybersecurity for a long time. I've been hearing about quantum computers for a very long time. I mean, years. We've been talking about quantum computers. I've had people working for me working in quantum computing for 10 plus years. So, I mean, it is something that has been in the background for a while. And just for those that are not familiar with the problem, the concern is that once there is a quantum computer, a lot of the basic cryptography that happens today is at risk to be decrypted or to be broken by an adversary, because the quantum computers can do it are built in such a way they can take advantage of the way current cryptography works. My opinion is, having looked at it and hearing from the experts on our team that design cryptographic algorithms for financial services and banks, et cetera, is that it's time to start thinking about it. There's not a quantum computer yet that we're aware of that's big enough to go break current cryptography. But given how long it would take to deploy one, and given how much data that is out there today that might be vulnerable in the future that's being stored, it's time to start thinking about it. NIST, the U.S. government organization for standards, is getting close to naming some preferred quantum algorithms. So I would say for the average organization that has sensitive data, it's at least time to start paying attention. Whereas in the past, I would have said we're not there yet, but now we are.
And forgive me, quantum computing, and I'm trying to think of, the quantum physics, or is it, we're talking about just a more powerful computer, right?
We're talking about a computer that stores and processes data in a different way than the computers that store data today do, which, without going into the uber technical details, that allows them to do certain types of mathematical operations that underpin most of the cryptography that is available today, that secures the internet, secures your bank, and secures our government. It allows them to do certain cryptographic operations much faster. And
it would be an actual jump shift in the entire way computing is done.
Yeah, and the good news is that there are quantum safe cryptography algorithms that are out there. They're just not heavily used, and they have trade-offs. And so that's why I say it's time to start paying attention. I'm not advocating for a wholesale shift. I'm just saying, if you're a security leader, you're a CIO, it's time to go pay a little bit of attention.
So I can say something like, hey, guys, are we using quantum safe cryptography algorithms to my IT team? That's a question.
And the answer will be no.
We know.
Okay. But I need to be thinking about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so for example, we have some customers that are in very sensitive technology areas that are starting to think about how they do data storage for their most sensitive secrets. And they're starting to look at this stuff. That's the first step. That's where the first concern areas are.
It's great to see a local company, Honeywell Quantum Solutions, and friend Jeff Miller, who those know, he's been in aerospace CISO for quite some time. So they're like Kudelski here. There is movement in it, but to the point. I'm not familiar with ASU's research in it. I'm sure we do have folks that are doing it, but it's on the horizon. But good luck, Eric. Let us know if your team, if the GPEC team has got anything secure.
I'm hoping to get a thumbs up when I go back to them. Oh yeah, we got that covered. We're good. Question here, guys, for anyone. With the infrastructure bill passing in the Senate, moving to the House, how does the inclusion of cybersecurity in the bill signify a shift in the industry? Anyone want to take that one?
Yeah, I don't specifically know the ins and outs of the cybersecurity, what's included in there. We just know that there is amazing amount of federal funds coming, and kind of like this digital teaching and learning initiative. We want to lift we want the rising tide to lift all ships for the entire school posture across the state of Arizona. And we believe that funds like that can handle infrastructure. And just like at ASU, we're trying to embed security into the things we build. We should be thinking about embedding security into the things we connect, into the things that we're running. And so I think by having it in there, it allows to not miss a security posture as you're doing those things. That's the way I'm looking at it. I don't know the ins and outs of what's physically stated.
My view on this is that the cybersecurity is definitely a priority for the government. There's a recent report out of the U.S. Senate's Homeland Security Committee about some concerns they have about the U.S. government's protection level related to cybersecurity. So I think this is getting more attention than ever before, more funding than ever before. The government has hired into key cybersecurity positions some really outstanding individuals. So I think it's got the priority of the government, and therefore you're starting to see cybersecurity kind of permeate through different funding bills as well as different priorities. And it's just being driven by A, the concern, and B, some very public attacks recently.
Yeah, and without knowing the actual detail with and how the fund is going to be allocated and stuff, right? We are also starting to see different departments, including the SEC and all, placing a whole lot more attention and focus around cybersecurity, increasing the number, the demand on disclosure, etc. I think many companies may have also seen that type of request coming in. So I'm sure that this is only going to continue to become more apparent.
Follow-up question here from Max. It appears that cybersecurity professionals are becoming more diversified and specialized. In addition to certifications like CISSP, what other specialized certifications are valuable to your company or the broader cybersecurity ecosystem?
You know, I think we are still pretty focus on the common certifications, the usual suspect for more of the senior level of cybersecurity professional. We are looking at the CISSP, which is most common, and you see a lot of people actually going through that certifications. But there are two other aspects that we look for, depending on whether they are in the more of the auditor type roles, where we look at CISA, and from a technology role perspective, or the manager role within the cybersecurity team, CISM. Those are the three that we typically focus on.
Got it. Question coming in, I guess, for everyone. What can smaller companies without dedicated IT departments do to protect themselves and their customers? I guess basically if somebody's not going to their team asking if we have quantum safe cryptography algorithms in place, where's 101 at? I guess where's cybersecurity 101 start, and what kind of conversations can they have with their employees and their customers?
So my perspective is that it really depends on how small you are. I mean, if you are what I'll say is kind of a medium-sized business with a reasonable size IT staff, but not necessarily big enough to afford dedicated security resources, that's the time to bring in an outside expert. You likely have the budget to do that. That's probably the right move versus trying to do it yourself. At least get some advice. I think if you're smaller than that, I still think an outside expert is the right thing to do. Although the reality is that most ISPs or IT providers today have some basic services available. You should leverage those. But I think more than anything, focus on the hygiene, patching, strong credentialing, two-factor authentication. Those types of topics I think are of the utmost importance, regardless of your organization size.
Andrew,
Yeah.
I guess that's a good point. Like, at what stage does somebody know it's time? You know, if I just have basic internet service and I'm running a business, aren't there certain levels baked into that internet service that provide me security? And then, oh boy, what do I need? At what point do I need to consult someone?
I mean, if you're it's just about, I think some self-analysis of what is the risk is somewhat necessary. I mean, the risks to a restaurant are very different than the risks at a doctor's office.
Right.
So I think you just got to think about what are my risks, and then apply the right budget based on those risks. But yeah, ignoring it is the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, I also want to chime in on that one as well. I agree with what Andrew just said. He took the word out of my mouth very quickly. It's at the end of the day, is the self-assessment, right? What we are seeing in the market today, everyone is rushing towards increasing their cybersecurity budget, spending on new capabilities, etc., building the team and stuff like that. But before you actually start doing that, ask that question: what do you stand to lose, right? If something were to happen, what is going to happen to your business? How is it impacting your customers, your supplier, your employees, etc.? And then from there, determine what kind of investment that you're going to need to make. And the other aspect of it is what kind of business you are in, what kind of data you deal with. Are you able to classify your data into what is sensitive and what is not? Obviously, if you're talking about very small outfit and enterprises, then maybe that is a moot point. But starting with that self-assessment is definitely the right way to think about it.
And also, like what Andrew referenced in hygiene, really think about that. Hygiene can be as simple as helping your teams understand how important it is that their passwords are kept secure. Just the password itself, that's how folks get in. And with ransomware, they just get access and they take control of your environment. They change the passwords and you can't get to your most critical system. If you're a small organization, that could even be your financing mechanism. That can be how you distribute a PO to pay. I know someone that lost $250,000 to a Chinese supplier as a relatively 3-person organization because they got in the middle of their payment system. So hygiene and understanding what people do to phish information is even just basic blocking and tackling any size organization can do.
Yeah, and
one more.
I'm sorry, Andrew. No, and one thing that it might look to be very simple to all of us, but reusing password is a big no-no in this whole cybersecurity environment. I don't know how many times we have to tell people stop reusing your password, because the credential staffing that you see, people are taking a whole lot of exposed password and try it on every single site, from banking to a corporate site to an e-commerce site to everything that you want. So that it always starts with that very simple act, to keep that in mind, not to share, not to reuse, stuff like that. That's just, it might sound simple, but it's key.
So just maybe one final comment for me. If your organization has any custom applications, you have a problem. I mean, if you're writing any code that is getting deployed anywhere for any reason, you have a problem. You need to have someone take a look. I mean, to me, that's very simple. I mean, not that everyone shouldn't take a look, but if that's the case, then you have a problem whether you realize it or not.
Yeah, thank you. All of that was very helpful, I think, and answered the question well. Last question before we let you guys wrap up here. How do you envision government and private sector collaborating to secure public infrastructure?
I'll take a shot. I mean, this is a good question. I think that my perspective is that for public infrastructure, it is the government's job. And the government is responsible for securing public infrastructure. Now, the government may choose to bring in outside experts to do that. So I think that's where the collaboration happens. This relates to many topics. This question relates to many topics for me, as far as, if, for example, if a company is a part of if a company is part of the public infrastructure, I mean, they should really be accountable to the government to make sure that they're secure. Because if they get breached and go down and they take down public infrastructure, that's bad for everyone. So I'm not necessarily advocating for more regulation, other than to say, this is why we have government. I mean, public infrastructure should be managed by it, and it should be a joint effort, but I think the government's in the lead.
All right, interesting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the panel here, just kind of give everybody an opportunity to wrap us up, because we've learned a lot today. Max, we'll start with you. Final thoughts after today's discussion.
A lot has been shared and discussed, right? And in my introductions, I talk about how this is not just a company's problem, it's not the government problem, it's everyone's, it's all of us. And I don't know, I'm sure everyone realized that we are more connected than we want to admit, right? I talk about the supply chain risk that we are seeing, and how we are having to secure an environment to make sure that that is not resulting in a breach or attack. But will there be an opportunity to see how the government, the private sector, individuals, everyone working together to form some sort of consortium to really protect us from the overall attack? Might be a thought to consider, right? And at the end of the day, if you use a computer, you use a phone, you have an electronic device, you have data stored somewhere, you are at risk of being breached at some point in time. It's not a matter of whether or not you will be, it's a matter of when. So keep that in mind.
All right, Chris, we'll let you weigh in from your perspective.
Just, you know, like here, like we all come from different perspectives, and we all can benefit from learning from each other. The lines of how business operates are blurring, and the ecosystems are changing significantly. So just be conscious if you have weak areas, whether it's internally or your external relationships, partner, find ways to work with the best tech companies, find ways, like for us at Department of Education, I think I saw JR on here, we partner with the best solutions that Department of Administration has. We're reaching out to Homeland Security to understand what we can benefit from each other. So just relook at your ecosystem and find who you can trust, and bring the best of what you can bring versus others bring, and just collaborate. I think while it can be complex to find the right fit, make sure it's truly secure, you can find you can do more if you get the right fit.
Thanks, Chris. Well said. Andrew, you want to bring us home here?
Nope. Appreciate the opportunity. I think from my perspective, it's an important topic, and I think it's getting more attention than ever. The other day, I walked down the hallway to our operations center, our cyber fusion center, and spoke to one of our engineers that is on the front line of this topic, helping companies deal with breaches in incident response, looking at how these attacks happen. And I said, hey, if you had to give any advice to a company, what would you give them? Someone who's really dealing with it every day. He said, there's no silver bullet here. I cannot give a single piece of advice that's going to keep someone from getting breached. However, there are two things that if every company did, it would really help. One is, do not give every employee system admin privileges to their machines. I think that makes a lot of sense. And two is disable macros and Office applications. You do those two things, it's not a silver bullet, but you'd be a lot safer than you were before.